right.
Recording in progress.
So it being a little after 6:01 on Wednesday, June 25th, we'll call this meeting to order. This meeting of the Reading Municipal Light Department Board of Commissioners is being audio recorded, held remotely on Zoom, and streamed live on RCTV and YouTube. The RMLD Board of Commissioners recognizes the importance of hearing public comment at the discretion of the chair on items on the official agenda. We ask that all questions or comments from the public be directed to the chair and that all parties, including members of the RMLD board, act in a professional and courteous manner when addressing the board or responding to comments. Once recognized by the chair, all persons addressing the board shall state their name and address prior to speaking. The role of the chair to maintain order in all public comment or ensuing discussion. Is there any public comment?
Nick Massey, who is he has raised his hand.
North Reading Select Board.
We have to call the CAB meeting to order. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right, we'll call the CAB meeting to order.
No
problem.
Pam, would you like me to?
Yes, please.
Okay.
How you doing, folks? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
So, thank you. I just wanted to make some quick comments on Greg Phipps, if I may.
Sure.
I just wanted to read a few words here. I wanted to mention that Mr. Phipps did a phenomenal job as a general manager for RMLD. This entity and our communities were lucky to have a gentleman like Mr. Phipps. It was one of my professional pleasures to work with Mr. Phipps as a selectman for North Reading. He made working with very easy and provided clear communication. He aimed for growth of RMLD and taking along the towns he worked with as partners, which I very much appreciated. Greg, thank you very much for your collaboration, your drive, and your service to the communities. I wish you all the best in whatever life brings you next. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment?
No.
All right, great. So we're going to move to agenda item 4, which is the interim general manager interviews. So we have one candidate who will be remote and we have 2 candidates in person. We're going to interview each candidate one at a time. The candidates will wait separately until called in for their interview. We're going to have a conversation with the remote candidate, Paul Ianu, first. And then we will bring Anthony Ansaldi and then Michael O'Neill in. I just want to talk quickly about the process for everyone. So you should have in front of you a couple of different, a few different documents, 3 of these, which is a score sheet or a note-taking sheet, okay? Use this however you'd like. It was set up so that you can take notes on each of the questions and then give a score between 1 and 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. But for the purposes of this is really for your own tracking. We will not be collecting these notes or these score sheets. This is just your own personal notes. What we will ask at the end of the interviews is we're going to do a forced ranking 1 through 3. And I'll ask the board, after some discussion, I'll ask the board to rank the candidates 1 through 3, and then we will compile those rankings. The candidate with the lowest score, if it's obvious, will be the first one. If we have to discuss it, if it's a tie or whatever, we can discuss that. We will then let the candidates know what that ranking is. It'll be a public process. We are then going to move into a different topic, which is the voting on the separation agreement. And at that point, once that topic is complete, that might include an executive session. We'll see how the conversation goes. Once that process is complete, we will come back to the interim GM conversation and move to go into executive session to negotiate the terms of the offer for the interim GM. After that process is complete, then we will go on to the rest of the agenda. So hopefully it will all go smoothly. We'll try to keep it on track as much as we can. And hopefully this will be an opportunity for everyone to get input on these next steps. Any questions on that process?
For executive sessions, you're going to go to the conference room.
We will do that. and then come back. Okay. All right, great. So, without further ado, we will bring our first candidate in, Paul Hugh. And, just for folks who are gonna be asking the questions, we're gonna keep focused on the questions that are provided here. And we're gonna make a recommendation to the candidate, how many minutes they have to respond to that question, just to try to keep us on track. We get a total of 22 minutes per candidate. So we are gonna have a timer and we'll stop it after 22 minutes just to keep that track.
Kim, we might need 1 second. He's trying to get on.
Oh, sure. Okay, thank you.
Right now. So be momentarily.
Okay,
Madam Chair. quick
Yes.
question. So we'll follow the script. Is there opportunity for any other follow-ups later or?
yes, I would say as long as we are focused on getting through all of these questions and keep it to 22 minutes. So we'll have to be selective about how we use those follow-ups.
And the information we have is the resumes and the cover letters, right?
Thank you for that. Yep. So everybody should have a packet as well in front of them, which includes the cover letters and resumes for the candidate. Feel free to reference that next to that.
Later. I get two. We'll give us all two. I guess so, like we'll apply. Yeah.
Yeah, he's out. Sorry, Greg, while we're waiting, were there any additional agenda items that we were,
No, not for this
no,
meeting.
not this, okay.
No, we're good. The only time we might do it is on the final executive.
Okay. While we're waiting.
Bear with us just a second, I'm sorry. Got somebody in a strange location.
Just wanted, looking at the agenda, seeing if we can bang anything out. While
The
we're waiting.
updates, I can knock out committee updates real quick.
Okay, let's do
Great
that.
idea.
Thank you.
So, the three activities that I have going on is, the MLCA Massachusetts, Light Commissioners Association. We had planned to do a Zoom meeting on cybersecurity. But that's going to be delayed till the fall. So our next gathering as an organization is going to be at the NEPA conference. We're going to have a meet and greet. I'm in the process of arranging that. And then come September, topics include doing solar outreach, cybersecurity, and NetPool, I think was the other one. New England, like I said, Power Pool. So those will come up in September, October, and we're going to squeeze in an early December rather than compete with a late November Thanksgiving or Christmas competition, and that will take us to the end of the year. The only other big news there is we are trying to align ourselves with MMA, Massachusetts Municipal Association, and that discussion's ongoing. Town of Reading Killam School Building Committee is proceeding with detailed design. They looking at energy efficiency options and doing modeling on that and proceeding with that. I've tried to encourage them to keep RMLD informed of what's going on so that we can help them. I felt a little distance in terms of how much engagement they want from us, so I hope that connection stays strong. The Retail Senior Center, not aggressively pursued, although it did get approved. They're a little less structured than the Killam School project, but that has been approved and is ongoing, and I don't have much detail on where its current status is or how they're proceeding with design, if they are. Any questions? But otherwise, that's my.
Both of these things are still regular meeting cadence that you're involved in.
Yeah, I think we should track all of these, of course. The two buildings are, I still think there's an opportunity for efficiency to look at those two building sites and say that that's a lot of land area, and that might be an opportunity for RMLD to look at that land area and say, can we do something that is a solar site or expand our position there? I mean, there's certainly some things that there's benefit that those projects do behind the meter, but I think in front of the meter, solar choice programs, other projects, I think we ought to look at that not as two different buildings, but one area of development and find ways that we can make that efficient and productive from an energy production standpoint.
Question? Okay. So let's move to 10, and take a look at the meeting minutes. Do you want to approve first?
Move that the RMLD Citizens Advisory Board approve the March 26, 2025 and April 16, 2025 open session meeting minutes as presented on the recommendation of the general manager and the board secretary.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Somebody want to read the?
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the March 26, 2025 and April 16, 2025 The May 15th, 2025 open session meeting minutes as presented on the recommendation of the general manager and the board secretary.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? All right, 5-0. Okay, all right, so we're gonna go out of order with the candidate, and start with Anthony Ansaldi. So if we can invite Anthony in, please. Real quick, I guess, scheduling, maybe we should just look at that. I'm just trying to make the most use of every moment on this meeting. So our upcoming joint, BOC and CAB meetings, tonight, obviously, Wednesday, July 23rd and Wednesday, August 13th, proposing August 27th instead.
The reason for the August 27th is we've got some bid packages that are coming back
Okay.
that are linked to Station 6 construction. They won't be back in time for the August 13th meeting. The following week is NEPA, so it'd be the following week after NEPA that we'd want to call a meeting for a regular, but primarily to approve some bid packages. That's the reason for the change from the August 13th to August 27th.
Okay,
If that works for everybody, it'd be helpful.
think that works.
Does
for me.
August 27th work?
It could be a relatively short meeting as needed.
Would
Okay.
would it be possible that, would it be a problem if the bid package got approved in September? Probably, right?
Yeah, we're good. We're trying to get, as part of the site prep, so we want to make sure that we get them done as soon as we can.
I mean, might we need, even if they're brief, then might we still need an August 13th meeting, even if it's a 45-minute meeting, there's a lot going on. Just to keep it on the books, and if you need to cancel it, but you know, sometimes these meetings go on for 3 hours and the neurons start to die off, at least for me.
Uh-huh. And normally you don't have any August
True.
meeting, and now we're saying 2 August
Well,
meeting.
yeah.
I'm available both of those evenings, so if others agree that we should hold both, and try to have 2 very short meetings. That's fine with me, but,
Bob had his
Do we-
thumbs up there.
would we need the cab if the second meeting is just procurement requests?
Yes.
Sorry?
Works for us.
Sure, I mean, so-
All right. So we're gonna hold 2, 13th and the 27th. And if we don't need the 13th, if we don't have enough going on, we'll cancel the 13th. Okay. Great. Okay, Mr. Ansaldi, thank you for joining. Excited to chat with you today. So I'm gonna start the time. We're gonna try to allocate about 23 minutes, including kind of this introduction here. So I'm gonna start that. If you hear a doorbell, that's the end of the time. We'll move forward. So we'll have 6 total questions. Each of the person asking the question is just gonna let you know how much time to take to answer the question. If we can try to keep to that. So I'll start with, first of all, thank you for your interest. Can you summarize your background briefly, and specifically what brings you to have interest in the interim GM role?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. So I'm proud to say that I'm over a 35-year public servant. Proud of that, and I've spent the last 20 years in municipal government, and which a large portion of that time was actually leading 2 communities. I first found out about RMLD. Actually, I was asked to take a look at your director of finance and accounting, and I had a couple of opportunities to sit down and interview with Mr. Phipps, and it really piqued my interest because some of the key initiatives that RMLD was undertaking was really right in my wheelhouse in the projects that I've done in other communities. So it really, as I said, it really led me to have more interest in that. I understand, I was looking forward to continuing on in the process. I understand Mr. Phipps is is moving on. But when this opportunity came open, I wanted to, extend an offer to the board where I could come in as an interim, GM via time while you're searching for a general manager, and also, give you that financial, leadership that right now that the organization was looking for. So, I have extensive budgeting in those communities. My last job right now is a CFO for the town of Concord, $140 million budget, responsible for the budget, for the capital plan. So I think there's a lot of transferable skills that can aid and really assist RMLD during this transition.
Just a quick 30-second follow-up. You mentioned some specific projects that Mr. Phipps shared with you that were right in your wheelhouse. Can you just give me an example or two of those?
Sure. So one of the things that was really exciting was this campus and reimagining this campus and I know there's a budding property. One of the things that I noticed when I was coming in and I asked Greg and said, what's this truck back here? Where's this other property? He told me that this was not all RMLD's property and that there's another owner. So, my experience in the town of Littleton was we had a similar project where we were in an old high school and we were looking to get out of that. And we had just built a library at that campus and we needed to build a senior center. And with that, we were able to negotiate a land deal with an abutting neighbor because that happened to the house happened to come up for sale. We were kind of lucky. I confronted the neighbor and said, we'd be interested in the town. We have that first right of refusal. He said, I already had it with a realtor. So we had to go through the bidding process. Ultimately, we weren't the highest bidder, but the owner wanted us to really have the property. So we did a friendly eminent domain taking and select board supported that. And then we went to town meeting and the resident got up and was really excited that he could offer his property, which all we needed to do was just rezone it or realign it just to make room for the senior center. So he got up and spoke for it and we were able to do that. And then we have a beautiful campus there now with a brand new senior center that they just cut the ribbon about 3 weeks ago. So symmetry to the library just really
Thank you.
creates a nice.
Thank you for that. So just really quick, this is an interim position. So 6 months is our projected timeline, full-time role during that time. Any constraints that you may have on for the next 6 months? Any limitations on ability to work full-time?
Yeah, it's when I was first an assistant town manager moving up, and I was actually the town manager ended up retiring, and they asked me to be an interim, and that short window became almost 8-9 months. So, 6 months, I think it's a little ambitious, but
you don't have any specific constraints within that time. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it to Dave for his 4-minute question.
Good evening. Thanks for coming in and applying. Just wanted to ask you, what do you consider the essential experience of an interim general manager running a large municipal utility like RMLD?
Certainly, from my resume, you can see I haven't run a municipal light plant, but what I have run in those 2 communities is 2 full service communities that I think skills that are very much transferable into this position, whether it be with creating the budget, like I said, capital plan, collective bargaining. I've negotiated several collective bargaining agreements. I'm also a gubernatorial appointment to the Joint Labor Management Committee, also called the JLMC. And real quick, for those that don't know what that is when a municipality and their police or fire department are at impasse in negotiations, they petition the JLMC to try to mediate and bring the 2 sides together. So we'll do that, and I'm the management side of that mediation. And then if we're still at impasse and it goes to arbitration, then I'm become part of a tripartite board with 1 member of labor side, myself, and then an independent arbitrator, and then we decide on the final terms of the CBA.
Great, thank you for that. Rich, Next question.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Anthony. Pleasure to meet you. You talked a little bit about the land deal in Littleton. I'm wondering if you could provide another example of a significant or critical accomplishment and maybe share some key lessons learned from that accomplishment, if you could.
Sure. So, really, I'm gonna mention another land deal because also there was a Indian Hill Music School. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that in Littleton. They were building a new facility in Groton. It was adjacent to the high school, which is really, you don't get an opportunity that much to have property that's adjacent to your school. So I ended up talking to them, and because the town was interested in purchasing that. So before they put it on the market, I said, talk to me, and they did. They originally wanted it on for $4.1 million. They offered it to us. I reminded them that through our partnership over the years, where we didn't get any tax revenue because they were a nonprofit and we let them use our high school for overflow parking, that we were looking for the hometown discount, and I was able to negotiate that sale for $3.4 million and save $700,000. That's not one of my bigger ones, though. When I was in Littleton as the town administrator, the IBM headquarters was in Littleton. It occupies 26 acres in the heart of Littleton Common. When I first got there, all of a sudden a for sale sign went up there, and I instantly talked to the broker and said, "What's going on here?" You know, because all of a sudden IBM was leaving us. Our, you know, the largest taxpayer, your largest employer, never a good thing for a community. Worked with them, bringing in. I said the town really wants to be part of any potential buyers for this property to make sure that their vision aligns with our vision. We have many master plans and different plans that the town has undertaken. So with that, I was able to weed out some that were just not going to make the cut for the community. And we were able to partner with one of the largest developers in the state, Sal Lapoli companies, and convinced him through our partnership that this is a good opportunity for him. This is perfect. He wants to do mixed use development. That's exactly what the community wanted. And the missing piece to that whole development was sewer. And we were working on a sewer project for years and years and years. But, you know, sewer project was going to be, you know, at the time, 25 million. It easily jumped up to 40 million by the time I left. But one of the things that we always were stuck on is you never want to say if you build it, they will come, because the taxpayers get stuck with that bill. So told Mr. Napoli if he, you know, went with us that, and he wanted some of those flows, that you have to pay for your share of the flows. So, and ended up being a good partnership where we negotiated that he's ended up paying about 80 to 85% of the cost of the sewer system. Also with that, we negotiated the start of putting town hall and getting out of that old high school and moving that to right to part of his development. So it was going to revitalize the center. They just finally, after years and years, because those type of projects take a long time, they finally broke ground on it about 6 weeks ago. So finally, it's something that's nice to see that you started years ago, and it's, you know, you're never going to be there by the time it's done, because it takes, you know, 10 years before it gets done, and probably another 10 years before it fully gets completed. But it's nice to see that impact, and it's one of the proudest moments in my career.
Thank you.
Right?
What would your 30 to 60 day plan look like to ensure that you can hit the ground running as interim GM?
So, you know, my approach is anytime I went to somewhere new is, you know, really doing the listening tour, going around, meeting everybody, you know, making sure that people realize that, you know, I'm here to be part of a team, you know, and I'm here to work together, because I truly believe that, you know, success doesn't happen on an individual basis. It's a team, and, you know, the old saying, teamwork makes the dream work. So I would certainly go on, make my way around the organization. Also, even with the neighboring communities, you know, I have relationships with some of those managers in those communities, and I think hearing from them too is also letting them know that, you know, there's a partner, and collaboration is really important. And with some of the expansion that RML wants to do in some of those communities, I think it's important that relationship building is really important. So that would, to me, would be a key.
How you doing, Anthony? Question, you somewhat answered this previously, but what's your experience managing unions and your background with negotiations? And just give us a few details on that, please.
Sure. So, like I said, I've successfully negotiated quite a bit of unions, even during the pandemic when people were saying we should shut the library down and send them home and not pay them. Instantly when you have a non-union environment and people are starting to talk like that, they quickly realized they better be protected with the union. So they ended up unionizing, and I had to start that whole process from the ground up. So we didn't even have a contract to work for. We had to sit down and actually start with, the introductory to a contract, and we had to work through that entire ordeal. So like I said, I've worked with a number of communities helping settle contracts successfully. Topsfield, Middleton, I have Arlington, I have North Andover cases, heading to Marshfield in another week and a half to try to mediate over there. So really have a lot of experience with collective bargaining. And it's important that I have good relationships with both the fire union and the police union, because again, working together, that's how we're able to get resolution and not really need to go to arbitration.
Thank you.
Vice Chair.
Yes, good evening. How would you approach emergency preparedness in storm response, considering we're a power company?
I never thought when I first became a town manager that I'd be managing during a global pandemic. And that was, that was quite challenging, because when COVID first hit, there was no instruction book. I think even the state kind of struggled, and this was all new to us. It hadn't happened in 100 years before that. But I instantly took a leadership role with that and asked neighboring communities, their managers, to come to my town hall where we sat and talked. And I said, we really need to stick together in making decisions, because the last thing we want is people pointing towards, Wenham's doing this and Hamilton's doing that and Danvers is doing something different, and all of these trails are aligned, and it would just create a lot of anxiety. So we all stayed unified, made decisions together, and tried to convince our boards to stay together, and that was real successful. I've coordinated, culvert failures where roads have collapsed. I've been part of storm preparedness at the EOC, even from my days in Brookline. When I was there, the marathon was going on, so we had, I was on the financial aspect of trying to manage through that, but been part of that. And most recently, I was asked to undertake coordinating the town services for the Battle of Lexington Concord, the 250th. So, and that was a year-long planning, and that was quite extensive, because working with our public safety partners, we were in MEMA, we were in Framingham, and we really wanted to make sure that the community enjoyed that event and was safe. And and what had happened in New Orleans with that truck that went through where there was no barriers, we really wanted to make sure that we closed our inner perimeter using heavy equipment trucks, using some of Concord light plants trucks to do road closures to keep our residents safe. So restricted some people to get inside there, more people, but everybody had a great time. It was safe. So I've done that. It's all different kind of storm responses and coming back into the community. I always like to be prepared and plan ahead and not wait for a situation to have to deal with it. So I like to get my team assembled, like the heat. It's an example. If I was running the organization where I'm at, I would have probably formed a meeting last week, talked about what cooling locations, talked to our senior center to talk about our most vulnerable population. That's all stuff I did during COVID. You know, we had a phone tree to check on people. So I like to think I work well under pressure in that environment.
Very good. Thank you.
Before the final 2-minute question, we have about 3 minutes for any follow-ups. Were there any follow-ups that anyone wanted to cover on either any of the questions we asked or any additional details? Right, go ahead.
You said in your cover letter that, and in your opening that you're interested in the CFO position. If not selected for the interim, that would still be of interest to yours and work with who does fill in an interim or permanent role.
Yeah, I'm interested. I think there's a lot of exciting projects and a lot of great opportunities for RMLD. Yes,
All right. So thank you.
thank you.
Sure.
You mentioned the JMLC. What was your toughest negotiation? You know, something that you felt like it wasn't going anywhere, and how did you handle that?
So I won't mention the community, but it was, you know, it's very emotional when you're negotiating. And I had a community where town manager was a little younger, and I knew him. We were very friendly, and he just had he kind of flew off the handle, walked out of the room. His fire chief came back, said, "I think he's going to fire me," you know, and I had to pull him upstairs in a room and said, you know, I'll say Bob because I don't want to say his name, but it's Bob. You're taking this personally. It's not. Let's break down the financial, you know, where the difference is, and is it really worth it? Because at the end of the day, if you're off by, and they were only off by about $15,000, I said, you're going to spend about $15,000 with your attorney to go through the JLMC. So you have to take the emotional aspect away. So it's kind of sometimes it's just a personal thing that you have to work through, and you have to grab that manager and let them realize, you know, don't take it personally. It can be difficult during negotiations, but don't take it personally. Stay focused. Thank you.
Great. So is there anything else that we didn't ask about in this brief interview that you were hoping to?
Buzzer hasn't gone off yet.
Not quite yet. You got let's see, about 2 more minutes.
No, just, you know, and you know, like I, you know, was looking over the key initiatives, and I just all of the things that you know, even the energy storage, you know, we're kind of going through that when in Concord Light Plant, they've talked about having a battery storage, and I understand the need for that, and shaving off the peak that, you know, we see the signs that are, you know, we have the same signs, right? Because of the intense use of electricity. So it's just, it really related to me that these seem like, I like projects. I like to get stuff done. I'm not somebody who likes to talk about something for a long period of time. I'm somebody who likes to dig in and see a concept become reality as quick as we can get there.
All right. We really appreciate you coming in.
Oh,
Thanks
thank
for
you,
sharing.
Catherine.
Thanks for your interest in the role, and thanks for hanging out
Thank you.
with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Anthony, Eric is gonna walk you out and you'll hang around.
Thanks so much.
And
Yes. Paul is ready for me. I'm gonna promote him to panelist.
Yes. Is everyone ready? Okay.
sorry about that, everyone, but it took us a minute to get them connected.
We were productive throughout the time, so thank you.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for so much for joining. Would you mind just pronouncing your last name for me so I get it right?
Sure, Henu.
Henu. Okay, thank you, Mr. Henu. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'm not sure if you can see us. This is Pam Daskalakis, Board of Commissioners Chair. Thank you so much for dialing in. We know you're out of town, and we certainly appreciate your flexibility in joining via Zoom. So we have the Board of Commissioners as well as our Citizens Advisory Board here. Our plan is to go just a little over 20 minutes. We have about 6 or 7 questions that we're going to ask you. We'll try to share how many minutes you have for each of those questions. And we look forward to learning more. So first of all, thank you so much for your interest in this role. Could you just summarize about 3 minutes for this question? Can you just summarize your background and why you're specifically interested in the interim GM role?
Sure. My name's Paul Henu. My work career has been in utilities, initially at an investor-owned utility, ComGas. I was a local union vice president there for about 10 years. There was an election. I lost. I went to work for Electric, another one of the Energy holding companies. I was in their labor relations group. I was there for 3 years, and then I went to electric operations in 97. I stayed in electric operations. I was the director of operations at Cambridge Electric Light Company. It's a it's an investor-owned single town utility. There was a merge between Energy and Boston Edison, became NSTAR. At NSTAR, I managed probably about 5 various service centers. I left there in 2007, went to work at the Hingham Municipal Lighting Plant. I was the assistant general manager for 4 years. And then in 2011, I became the general manager, and I served that capacity until I retired in 21. So that's the background. Why I'm interested in this, I heard that the position was open, and, I'm not out of there that long. When I say there, out of, managing a municipal electric light department. And, I'd like to get back into it for a little bit, and coming in as an interim is kind of perfect. At this juncture of my life, I'm not looking forward to another 20-odd years working. So interim just works out fine. In a 4 to 6 month interim works out just fine for me and kind of where I am in my life now.
Great. Thank you for that. So just a follow-up in our second question, as you said, this is an interim position. We are anticipating that it would be about a full 6 months. Just wanted to check in terms of your availability. Do you have any limitations? I know you mentioned 4 to 6 months. We're thinking it will be at least 6 months.
Okay.
Any limitations to working full time for a 6-month period?
No, I don't have any problem. No, that a 6 month plus will not be an issue for me.
Okay.
So it's 6 months plus, as long as plus doesn't turn into a year and a half. You know what I mean?
Got it. Okay. Understood. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to pass it over to Dave for a 4-minute question.
Hey, Paul, Dave Talbot here. How are you doing?
It's good, David. Thank you. How are you?
Good, thanks. Just quickly mention to people that through my company, I had worked on a project at Hingham Light on fiber optic planning. So I had an opportunity to interact with Paul. And because I had that experience, I did go and file the form as that I had that experience with Paul. It's not an issue. I checked with Chris Pollard also. It's about 6 years ago. So anyway, just wanted to mention that. So I guess the question is, Paul, what is the essential experience? Obviously, you've got tons of experience at HMLP and elsewhere, but in terms of managing at the interim level here at Reading Light, what's the essential aspect, and how is it different than what you've been doing so far? It's a little bit of a variation on what's written here.
Yeah. So as I see it, the only real difference is, acting as an interim, I would be responsible for responding to how you folks, what sort of direction you gave me, in that time period. I'm not going to be necessarily looking out 20 years, but I'm going to be looking out to where you folks want me to take RMLD, awaiting the permanent general manager.
Any breaking that down a little bit? You have 4 minutes no, you don't have to do the 4 minutes, but is there any breaking that down of what those pieces might be? Do you have any other thoughts?
Well, depending on what projects you have currently working and at what stage they are, I would be working to bringing them to completion. I saw on your website, you're getting ready to change your meters over. So that is, going from a AMR to AMI. So, that is something that I could certainly, as an interim, hopefully bring to maybe not completion in 6 months, but get it well on its way. Because I don't know where you are kind of at this point. The various projects you have, keeping them going, and then any other projects that, are kind of in your wheelhouse right now, I would bring them forward.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Rich.
Hi, Paul. My name's Rich Swanson. Appreciate you being here tonight. I'm wondering if you could give an example of a significant or critical accomplishment, maybe something that you're particularly proud of, and share some key lessons that you brought away from that.
At any of my work spots, or just at Hingham?
Take your pick.
So, sure. So I would say the most difficult one that I had to deal with was I was a new director of operations at Cambridge Electric Light. I was there for 3 days, and we had a fatal manhole explosion. The deceased Cambridge Electric employee, 6 kids. We went to work one day and didn't come home. Half the city of Cambridge was flat as a result of the manhole explosion. So I had a very upset, angry workforce. The deceased was particularly beloved. He was one of the senior guys. There was a tragedy of, we had 6 kids and another, an infant living with them. I had the city of Cambridge pretty upset. So, I had to manage and I'm there 3 days. I barely knew where the men's room was. So, I had to, I had to work through that to restore the system's integrity and to restore the confidence in the workforce that, they were working in a safe environment. And, it doesn't get any more difficult, I would say, than having to deal with that.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
Ray.
Have to switch the page here, so I was a little slower
Okay.
flipping it over. Ray Porter here. I do relate to being retired or semi-retired and deciding what you want to do. So I ran for RMLD Board of Commissioners, since having fun in my house and playing wasn't enough. So thank you for looking at this opportunity. So my question for a 2-minute response, what would your 30 to 60 day plan look like to ensure that you hit the ground running?
So I would, the first thing I would do would be to, introduce myself to the employees and get to find out as best I can immediately, or almost immediately, to find out as quickly as I can, the mood of the room and what's happening. I would talk to the supervisors and the represented folks. I would find out where, as I said a few minutes ago, where you are, where they are with projects, and keeping them moving ahead, and then taking direction from you folks as to, where you wanted RMLD to go, to either lay the groundwork or continue with the groundwork that has already been set on those.
Thank you.
Hi, Paul. Hi, this is Bob Poulter. I'm going to ask you a question, and you do have extensive experience, so I'm very interested in your response. Can you please tell us your experience and what you have with managing in a unionized environment?
I'm sorry, managing a unionized environment?
Yes, your experience, what experience do you have with managing in a unionized environment? And, you know, looking at your resume, it does seem very extensive.
Yeah, so, all of my, so once I left the union at ComGas, all of my experiences have been, working with organized, employees, initially in HR when I was in labor relations, and then from there to electric operations at Cambridge Electric Light, and, moving to NSTAR, and the service centers that I worked at NSTAR were all Boston Edison service centers. So, I didn't know any of those folks. So I met them and worked with them, and, like I say, about 5 different service centers. And then in Hingham, it was an organized workforce there also. And it was kind of more of the same. Didn't know anybody, got to meet everybody, and develop working relationships with all.
Thank you.
How are you? This is Tim Woods from the Citizens Advisory Board. So how would you approach emergency preparedness and storm response when you would be taking over as the general manager? And do you have any experience, not experience, but an example of a particularly bad storm or a bad period of time that you had to do extra preparedness or plan?
Sure. So storm preparedness, that doesn't start, that morning when you catch the news or the weather and you find out you're going to get a foot of snow that night. Storm preparedness starts when it's a blue sky day. You want to make sure that your stock is sufficient to get you through a storm. You want to make sure that, your employees are, trained and ready to go when necessary. Depending on the size of the storm, you want to make sure that you have arrangements made at hotels that you can, board people if people are coming in from out of town. So the process for storm preparedness doesn't start, like I say, the morning of. It starts, that would be one of those first duty things, is find out how well are we set up for that. In terms of a most difficult storm, so I talked about the Cambridge Electric situation. That one, we brought in contractors where contractors had never been before. We brought in Boston Edison. Boston Edison employees had never been on the property at Cambridge Electric Light. We were able to get through that. Like I said, half the city of Cambridge was flat. MIT was flat. All those bio places, they were flat. So we had to get the system restored. In terms of a most difficult, I'll say in Hingham, we had a snowstorm. It was I forget what they call those storms, but thunder, lightning, rain, snow, started on a Thursday night. And we worked through till Sunday night, and we were fully restored by Sunday night. The crews worked magnificently, and so the customer service reps stayed overnight. We brought in cots. We were in the building from Thursday, so the employees were in from Thursday morning at the start of that regular workday until early Sunday, late after Sunday afternoon, early evening. So it's about 30 inches of snow, wind, rain, the whole package.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome.
Okay, we have a few additional minutes again too before I ask my final question. Any follow-ups? Yes.
I have one. Going back to the union-based question, Could you please detail like your toughest negotiation that you've had and how you dealt with that?
Sure. So I would say that my toughest negotiation wasn't when I was sitting on the management side, but it was my last contract at the gas company. They came in particularly hard looking for significant work rule changes. The prior contract, we had made a deal around health insurance, and we had made some concessions, and concessions significant enough that the company agreed not to bring up health insurance at the subsequent. But they came pretty hard looking for work rule changes, and it was impacting the loudest and most strident section of the local. And, we had about 500 members at the time, and we were probably talking about maybe 60 or so that were going to be the most impacted. And, I had to keep in mind that I had 500 families that I was responsible for and responsible to make sure that we didn't go out on the sidewalk for something that was not going to impact the rest of the local for the rest of their careers. So we made a lot of concessions. There were a lot of unhappy people, but we got that contract. Everybody got a raise. Nobody lost their job. And the contract after that, the local got locked out for 6 months. So while I did not get reelected after that election, I had a lot of people coming up to me afterwards saying, yours wasn't so bad. I kind of wish you were still around.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sure, Dave.
So Paul, you've been retired for 4 years, right?
Correct.
So I just wonder what have you been doing? Are you doing any work in that 4 years, or why coming back at year 4 or 5 now? But mainly, are you doing other types of work now, or are you just literally coming in cold after 4 years of not being in the workforce?
So I have not been working anyplace else. Frankly, there was nothing that particularly piqued my interest. This has, and given that it is an interim, I think it would work out well for both RMLD and myself. RMLD is going to, presuming that I'm offered the position, RMLD is going to have someone who has a lot of time, a lot of experience, working for and with local unions, managing people, managing utilities. I'm certainly not going to say I've seen it all, because I know I haven't, but I'm going to hazard a guess that there isn't too much that I haven't seen or had to deal with, in the course of from 1997 to 2021.
Hey, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Paul. My name is Charlie Protopappas. I'm out of the Citizens Advisory Board. I'm just curious, what's the average career in Hingham Light? Do you have a lot of turnover, or are you able to hold on to your talent?
So when I was at Hingham Light, let me think for a second. I don't know that there was anybody. So at Hingham, there were probably about 30 or so employees, thereabouts, a little more, a little less. In my 14 years at Hingham Light, I don't think there was a single person that left of their own volition. There were a few that were asked to leave, but there were nobody left on their own. I'm short of retiring.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there anything else that you had hoped to share in this brief time that we didn't ask about?
You're asking me? Yeah. No, I don't think so. Like I say, if I'm offered the position, I'll be able to hit the ground running. I've been in this utility world pretty much my entire working career. My last 14 years were at a Muni. And so if I get it, I would expect there'll be a very short learning curve.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. And again, appreciate you dialing in while you're out of town. I would love to I don't know if you are going to hang on the line, but just keep in touch as we'll go through this process, and we'll keep you posted on the next steps on the agenda item.
So I'm not sure I understand what you want me to do. So
Paul, this
Yeah.
is, if you want to exit out, that's fine. And then I have your number on my cell phone and we'll beam you back in when we need to. We'll let you know.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, because I had a bit of difficulty getting in, so I'm going to leave this on, this being the laptop, my daughter-in-law's laptop. I'm going to leave this on. I'll leave the room. You can send me a text, when you want me to come back, and I'll come back. But
That's
it was
perfectly fine. It's an open
it
meeting.
was a bit of work getting in. I don't want to go through that again.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Okay, great. I'm leaving. Thank you.
Hi. Okay. Danielle, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate it. Nice to see you.
Hi, Mike. How's it going?
So we've got about a little over 20 minutes. We have 6 or 7 questions that we'll go through. We will just give you kind of an estimated timeline for each of the questions just to make sure we get through everything, but I'm sure we'll be able to do that.
Okay.
So first of all, thank you for expressing interest in this and being willing to step up and take on a new role. But we really appreciate that. We obviously know you, but if you could just summarize your background for us briefly, and then just share a bit about why you're interested in this interim GM position.
Okay, sure. Yes, I graduated college in 98 from Wentworth in environmental engineering. And then I worked as a construction superintendent for about 7 years. I got out of college doing sewer, water, drain, site work, a lot of underground construction. And I worked in Boston a lot, in Dorchester. From there, I got a job as a supervisor at, by the time it was NSTAR, but they turned it to Eversource. But so I was an underground supervisor at NSTAR. And I was there for 11 years. And so during that time, I was underground trouble supervisor downtown Boston, working all over Boston in all the Eastern Mass, pretty much, like nights and stuff like that. And I did anything from underground construction, conventional construction, and commercial construction. Also, from there, I went to a planning role. I did outage coordination and planning for probably about a year and a half. And then I went back out to the field. I worked as a construction supervisor, doing station transformer replacements, switchgear replacements, station construction projects, new control houses, trend wire installation for the control wiring, breaker replacements. And then from there, I also did a lot of piped up cable construction, so underground transmission construction. So replacing a bunch of sections of pipe type cable. I did a bridge repair, emergency repair in Gilmore Bridge in Charlestown. From there, after they had that failure, we did all kinds of cable replacements. Then we did placed all kinds of 115 kV potheads in downtown Boston. Then we installed some oil return lines for the pipe type cable system, control houses, and heat exchangers for the pipe type cable system. And then from there, I went to National Grid. And then National Grid, I was there for almost just under 7 years. And so when I went there, I was an overhead supervisor in Hopedale in the South. So I was there for about a year. Then they asked me to be the underground manager, an active role underground manager in the North Shore, because they had some problems up there. And so I was an underground manager in the North, like down Hanover, Malden, North Andover, and Beverly, that whole area. So I was there for about a year, and then there's a role opened up in the South, and I became overhead underground, manager for the South and for National Grid. So I worked in the Southeast. Then the last few years I worked, in the South Shore. So, you know, I had 3 service centers, 13 supervisors and about 100 union employees. And so, from there, like during COVID was kind of ending or coming close to an end, and Jacobs Engineering reached out to me, and they had well, they said a 5-year contract with PG&E in California, and they could ask me if I'd move out to San Francisco, and that's why I was really interested in moving to San Francisco. And they said, well, you can work remotely, but you need to go to San Francisco like 1 weekend a month. And so, you know, I took the job, like, you know, it was a good offer and stuff like that. And I went out to San Francisco one weekend, and you know, the person I was going to meet PG&E out there was like, oh, we can just do a Teams call. We don't have to meet in person. So I went out there, did a Teams call with them. Then after that, when I flew back, like, you don't have to go out to San Francisco anymore. Just do it all remotely. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. So I had a bunch of work for a while, and then the work started dying down. Like I said, they told me I had a 5-year contract, and I was sitting around for about a month and a half, and they had a time materials contract was what they had for the time being. But PG&E told them that they had to bid jobs, and you know, they weren't just going to give them time materials contracts. And so they weren't winning any contracts. And then so I sat around, I was getting paid, but I was like, no, a month and a half was going by, and I'm like, I can't just sit here and do this. And then so this job, the director position came open, and I was offered that job. I accepted, and so I've been here a year and a half as director of operations.
Great. In interest
Oh
specifically.
yeah. So I mean, I've been here a year and a half. I mean, I would say from continuity perspective, you know, I know all the different groups that positive interactions with everybody. I have a good feel for the business here, like how things are run. They said, you know, all the different groups I interact with almost on a daily basis or a weekly basis at the least. So I mean, and I think you know, I'm pretty comfortable here, and I think I can do a good job.
It's an interim position. I don't know that this is super relevant, but you're already full-time. It would continue to be full-time probably for about 6 months, no constraints, or anything from that perspective for you.
Oh, no problem. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to pass it over to Dave for a question.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, thanks for putting in and getting up there. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Just want to know what do you consider the essential experience for specifically for the interim role? You know, that running RMLD on an interim basis, what is the most important thing for the interim aspect of that?
I think it's one of the most important things is probably maintaining continuity between all the different groups. I mean, I think it'd be hard for an outsider to come in and, you know, by the time you even know someone's name, sometimes, you know, weeks go by learning people's names. So I think I have an advantage in that. You know, I pretty much know everyone that works here, and like I have interactions with them right now for different reasons. That, you know, right now I have facilities, I have the line department, you know, I have the grid assets group, and you know, just through anything that we do, we interact with everyone, procurement, IT, like all the different groups right now, we kind of overlay in some way and interact like on a daily basis. So I think as far as maintaining that continuity, I think that's important. And I think we already have a head start in that.
I have a quick follow-up on that one, if it's okay. Would just be, you know, you alone among the 3, it would be unusual because you're here and it's interim would mean going back. How are you thinking about maybe getting the corner office, but then having to go back? Are you ready for how that might be? Like, how do you look at that and ready for what that going back would be?
No, I'd say, I mean, you know, life's full of chances, right? I mean, when you make a decision, you mean, you make it for the reason to, you know, to succeed. Obviously, I mean, that's my goal. So, I mean, I guess, you know, however it plays out, you know, it is what it is at the end, but I mean, it's an opportunity. It's still something to build off, you know, for myself as well. So, so it's a good opportunity.
Hi, Mike.
Hey.
My name's Rich. I don't think we've met yet, but nice to meet you. If you could provide an example of a significant or critical accomplishment, maybe something that you're particularly proud of, and then try to draw a couple of lessons learned from that, I'd appreciate hearing about that.
All right. I guess one example, when I was at National Grid, they had an incident, and like the supervisor, it's obviously a big company, like the supervisor in the morning will fill out a crew sheet to where the crews are going. So if there's any emergencies, the dispatch would know who was on the site, you know, what equipment was there and where they were. So so for a long time, that crew sheet was kind of abandoned. People weren't weren't filling out anymore. So there was an emergency in New York where the guys were setting a pole and they got into a transmission line. And a couple guys got hurt. When they went to call for help, you know, they were all shaken up and they couldn't really give the exact information, who was out there, what happened, what the address was. So the dispatch, you know, found out where the lockout was and all that, and they noticed that, and they called the supervisors. And so what happened after that is the other management wanted to create a team from Massachusetts and in New York, and that team was supposed to develop a new crew sheet database. And so it's me and one of the dispatchers out in Massachusetts, and it's two guys from New York. And so then we had a computer programmer. So we developed a new crew sheet that was like it created alerts. So the supervisor had to put it out in the morning if they get an alert. And so their manager and all the dispatchers had access to that crew sheet. So every morning, when the dispatch is set up in the morning, if they look at the different service centers and they don't see that the crew sheet was filled in, they could send an alert to the supervisor. And if the supervisor, after 2 alerts, the supervisor didn't get it, the manager would get the alert saying it wasn't filled out. So it was for safety. And so after that, we created that crew sheet. We went around to different service centers, got input from different people, created that crew sheet. We rolled it out. We went to did all the training. We went to New York, helped train crews over there. The New York guys came here and helped us with our service centers and helped train all the service centers, the supervisors and managers how to use the crew sheet. And so after that, it was implemented to the whole company. And so like today, they still use that crew sheet for everyday regular work, and for any storm work, they use that. So
Great.
it was a big project, and it was successful.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Well,
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And 2 minutes sort of targeted for this question. You're here, so you know a lot of the operations. So what would you do in your 30-day plan look like to ensure you can hit the ground running? Obviously, you know everybody in the teams, but specifically as you step into the role of interim GM, what things do you see are important to you to do in that first period in terms of taking on those additional responsibilities? How do you see that?
Yeah, I guess the style, like a lot of things that Greg does, I don't really get involved with. So like between like paying bills, meeting with different companies that like we have contracts with. So I guess the start, I have to familiarize myself with that. Also, one of the 2 big jobs that we have going on, projects, the AMI project and the construction project, make sure those the stage construction project, make sure those stay on schedule, and anything we need for those that we're those needs are met. And also, like I said, I'd be meeting with our procurement group, see what needs they need from me, like the payroll, and all the different directors, different things that Greg might have been working on that that were still like ongoing or incomplete that still need follow up. So I guess a lot of those type of activities are probably my priority. Because I mean, like from my job, it's it's second nature kind of thing. But that type of stuff, what Greg was doing, and not me. So I'd have to get my hands around all that stuff and make sure not miss anything there.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Hey, Mike. So my question is, can you please detail the experience that you have with managing in a unionized environment?
Okay, yeah. So I've been supervisor / manager for almost 25 years, and always through a union environment. So I worked with the unions at Eversource, National Grid, and the unions here. So and I was involved in labor negotiations at National Grid. I was on the team, and I've been on the team here as well, working through the contracts. So basically, my whole career pretty much working in a unionized environment.
Yeah, I would have the same follow-up that I'm asking everybody. Can you detail like your toughest negotiation that you've had, and how did you deal with that? From things didn't go well, one parties got a little wanted too much, and how did those negotiations go?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is always give and take. I mean, basically, both sides have to give and take. I mean, I think I have a funny one. It's like you laugh, but like it's something that like I covered Nantucket. So Nantucket years ago, they had a policy where the guys go out on the job, and when they got coffee break, they go back and take coffee break back at the shop. Well, Nantucket's changed over the years, so like there's a lot of traffic in Nantucket. So I was in charge of Nantucket, so like every time they go out to the job, by the time they set up, they turn around, go back for coffee. They'd come after they have the coffee, go back to the job site. So it's like I'm like, we got to change. Then different higher ups go out there, they visit something, and all of a sudden, like, what are they doing? Like right now, I'm like, well, it's in the contract. We gotta do something about that. We gotta change that. So we end up, working something out. So and Nantucket's expensive. So even like the guys that work there, I mean, people see like the dollar value, say, oh, they make a lot of money over there. Well, it's the cheapest house over there is $1 million. So like that's like a shed pretty much. So like people don't realize that like on paper they look at it and see how much money they make. So they make all kinds of money. And so it's like those guys, a lot of them aren't very rich. I mean, they just so we had to negotiate a deal with them for their coffee breaks. I think we ended up giving them like $7.50 or $8 like a stipend, daily stipend. We add to their contract, so but I mean it was a win for the company. Everyone's like, oh, that's $40-50 a week each employee. But it's like, yeah, well, how much you lose when 4 guys or 8 guys go out to a job site. So the first 4 hours a day is gone. They go out to set up, go back, get coffee, they go out, set up again. Hopefully the cops didn't disappear and, trying to step on a main road. But in Nantucket, like for a small island, it's a lot of problems. I mean, and people don't realize how much traffic's on that island. So you think you get to the other side of the island in 5 minutes, that's not the case. So guys could be 3/4 way across the island. It takes them about 40 minutes to get out there. They set up, look around, they go back for coffee, then come back out there. So it's, it was a win in the long run. And it kept the employees happy because at least they got something, it wasn't really so much coming out of they didn't feel so much it was coming out of their pocket, they were penalized. So
Thank you.
Overall, it's kind of a funny story, but if you don't Nantucket, it's a little, I guess it's a little different.
Cab.
In your capacity as a operations guy, how do you deal with emergency preparedness and storm response? And I'm sure you have a few stories on that, but can you give us an example of one?
Yeah, I guess almost every day, like when the first thing I do is probably check the weather. It's like see what's the forecast of the week, what is the wind for the week, what's the temperature, when is it going to rain, like precipitation, or just like something like this week with the heat. I mean, we had 2 crews stand by for the heat because yesterday it's it's gonna be 100 degrees. Something's gonna happen. It's like guys are here in the heat, then they go home. Trying to get someone back sometimes can be hard, especially with they're home with the air conditioner to get someone going when it's 100 degrees. So I think as far as preparation, like that's just a small part, but almost on a daily basis, we're always preparing and like looking at what could happen. Yeah, I've been in storms at like National Grid where we had over 500 contracted crews, 50 internal crews, 75 crews from New York coming and help. So it's like you're in the morning, 700 crews are coming in, like they're gonna be here in an hour, and like no one wants to see them sitting around. So you have to get them, get them working, get them going. So it's like it's something that you have to be ready ahead of time. You can't just wait till the last minute. So it's important to to have foresight and like always looking ahead and being prepared.
Very good, thank you.
But,
All right, we have a couple extra minutes. Are there any other follow-ups? Anybody wanted to ask before I ask my final question? No? Okay. So Mike, or Mr. O'Neill, is there anything that you wanted us to ask or wanted to share with us that we haven't asked about this time?
No, I mean, like I said, I think I'd be a strong candidate. I mean, I'd do a good job. So, and like I said, I think it's continuity wise, it's kind of an easy transition if that's the case. So.
Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, perfect. So what I think we'll do now is maybe just give everybody a couple minutes to look through your notes and think through your feedback. So you're welcome to leave the room. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Whatever you'd like to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
Hold on.
Make sure it's physical.
Maybe I'll just is 3 minutes. Okay, how about a 5 minute? So if you need to, to step out for a minute, feel free to do so. But otherwise, just a few minutes to kind of go through your notes, and we'll do an initial ranking and then have a discussion. Sounds good. 5 minutes time. Oh, here, got it right here. Back by the doorbell.
The appropriate time in the next session. So. This is it. 2 pages.
Okay.
When it's, when you get to the station.
Okay. Yeah.
I just want. You're right.
Oh, okay.
No.
Can we, is there any discussion that we had planned to have?
He's waiting.
Okay,
Just mute, just mute.
go catch your flight. Don't wait. Thanks. Appreciate it.
You can't mute. No.
Make it, you know my question already.
We can't do that.
Oh.
Because this is RC again,
Yeah.
it's difficult to do that metric, but then we saw, actually also did that metric, so we're gonna talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, Megan,
Well, then come on.
I have
That's
a
fine.
follow-up question. Last month it was, I was having trouble getting the exact question out, and it relates to the peak shaving between the battery and, sort of AMI enabled demand side management. I'm wondering if you guys did any sort of,
Why don't we give
I
them the
understand that the
Just like
benefits that we receive are.
So if they want to come in, that's fine. If they prefer not to, they don't have to.
Or during a peak period.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for
What
that.
I'm curious about is the cost for each one of those.
Like, how do I know if you're, like, this would be a really good answer compared to the other people? How would I-
Yep, either, it is difficult and.
What's this?
Okay.
What's the thing like? Which of these is?
Okay, sure.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
That's being made. And so that's really where my question was, is how do those costs compare? Exactly. So if you're doing a battery discharge and you reduce by a megawatt, we've saved, I don't know if we get some demand charge reduction off of that too, but it'd be interesting to see the full benefits from whatever these reductions are. But how much does that cost per megawatt? And then how much does the demand side management in some kind of a scenario, if you're working with, I don't know, your biggest 10 clients or something like that. So anyway, that was my question. So it'd be interesting.
You like to do
that.
Yeah, and also generally, the cost side is actually minimal and with the current model we have, like all the storage, we don't actually own it. We don't really pay after. We pay some of it, like to install poles and transformers to enable.
Isn't there some kind of, so is there
We're-
like a
we're
benefit
hotline
share that you're?
No,
getting?
just, I didn't like it. I didn't like your question.
So whatever that
said, I didn't like it.
So you're paying for, so you're,
60 days.
whatever you do.
Oh,
yeah.
And I apologize because
I didn't even know that you said you didn't like that push.
Yeah.
So-
like that. Well,
So it-
okay, I was
So you-
like, wow, it's kind of similar to mine. I didn't say anything.
Yeah, no, yeah, I noticed that comment, yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting, but it parlayed well, right? It flowed. We had the right amount of questions. I was concerned that we were gonna have too too many.
Too many questions.
But it ended up working out perfect. It was like speed dating. It was like, it worked well.
But with the load growth, maybe it's here, so.
Yeah, you
how
gotta
much that-
benchmark. Yeah, you gotta benchmark
that's
first. Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah.
We just need to think about like
Yeah.
how we actually can account for it.
Well, and also would be interesting to understand the marginal benefit that you're getting. In other words, is the first megawatt
Yeah.
reduction, is that the same as the 10th? Right,
Especially for on the demand response side.
right.
So how much
Yeah,
they-
yeah, exactly. Well, for sure for them. I mean, that's gonna be it's gonna be a smaller chunk. But anyway, that was my question last time, so.
I will continue, we baffle.
Yeah. All right, well, when you get to some analysis
Yeah.
or presentation or something, it'd be. Thank you.
Okay. we're gonna try to do everything here, today, so. yeah, but I'll try to keep the comments concise.
Can, if we rate, how do we do that before we, can we do that before we rate
Before we discuss?
Yeah.
You mean? So maybe I'll just wait. I'll propose what I'm thinking
Yeah, okay.
when the other two come back into the room. Well, they have 5 seconds before we're gonna get
Let's
started.
go.
Uh,
And under the wire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. See?
Like the bell.
Okay. Gotta pick something that wasn't.
Chris,
obnoxious for a
yell
while.
out, then tell them to, hurry up, tell them to get Talbot and.
You just talk to the rest of
Okay. And
them. Busy is what's the other one.
But Jason.
knew I shouldn't have let you all leave the room. All right, well, we have a quorum, so I'm just gonna get started, and we'll catch them up. So here's what what I'd like to propose, is that we, just go kind of in order, either starting here or starting here. And if you could just share, for each of the individuals, we can do, in order of the interview, where you place them in your ranking, and just a little bit of feedback on why, just maybe a minute or two, just so I can, number one, capture folks' rankings, and then number two, share a little bit. And then at the end, if anybody wants to change their ranking based on the conversation, we can do that. And then we'll go from there. Does that sound like a problem? Yeah. You mind if I start with you, Charlie?
No, I don't mind at all.
Okay.
So I had Paul Henry ranked first, because he has great experience. He's okay with being an interim. I think would be a great placeholder while we did a full-time search. He wouldn't be trying to impress us with anything other than keeping Reading Light moving forward. He's done his research. He knows about our projects. I was just impressed with him, and he wouldn't have to worry about going back to frontline worker as Mike would. So that Mike was my second ranking. Just because I feel I feel for the interim position that Paul was just better. I was more impressed. I feel like he was more well spoken. I know there's a lot of pressure, but I just felt that he flowed a little bit better. And that my Anthony Asali was my third ranking, just because he didn't have any utility experience. And I feel that is necessary for this position.
Thank you.
Okay. I also had Paul rated first, due to his lengthy experience, managing electric utility and his lengthy experience being a GM at a municipal light plant specifically. So he knows the differences between municipal light plants and an investor owned. And I think, and as you mentioned, the interim seems a better fit for him, where he's not going to be competing for long term. So I think his overall experience in the industry, and specifically municipal light plants and running one, I think puts him ahead of the others. I kind of had Michael and Anthony kind of very close. I probably would put Michael a little bit ahead, just because he has the industry experience in electric utility, as well as working in Reading. He would be able to have some continuity, as he mentioned, knows the teams and the people and the culture. I was somewhat impressed with Anthony's leadership of leading municipalities in general. So I kind of took a slight lesser background because he doesn't have any utility management experience, but it seems like he has a really good handle on managing municipals, which is a valid asset that could help. Go ahead.
I rated Michael as number one. I thought they would just be able to continue on with everything that's already here. You don't have to go introduce yourself and find where all the things are and who's doing what the schedules are. It would just be a seamless flow. It is difficult having somebody move into the corner office like that. But again, you never know. So you won't know until the person's there. And then I rated Anthony second because of his administrative skills. And if you're looking for that criteria of, let's just run this through, we have directors and managers underneath there who handle their own departments. And that would be a very good administrator of the whole thing. I did like Paul's stuff. He has a ton of experience. He already has sat in a big chair and done all that, but it just, for me, he hasn't done anything for 4 years. And it's just like, yeah, I'm gonna throw my name in the hat, and he may not care as much because he's just here and he just kind of go along. So he could do it, and I don't have any, if he did get it, but that was my choice, so that's how I did it.
Thank you. I guess, I had Paul as number one. I had Michael as 2 and Anthony as 3. And some of the reasons were very similar to what Jason and Charlie said. I think for Anthony, he would make a good director for finance because a lot of the things that we're working on, I think he's got a lot of experience. So I think, we should be thinking about both positions that way so that,
And just to make sure, although I understand that point, we can't make any decisions around that. So we have to stay focused on the internal role, but I see your point.
Yeah, so I think there's value that, he could still be associated with the organization.
Thank you for that.
I like Mike, number one. I took Paul as number 2 and Anthony as number 3. I had Paul and Anthony very close. Reason why I chose Mike again is a continuity factor. I believe he steps in. That's a proving ground or a learning ground, learning experience. The continuity of coming back in. Again, I picked Paul too. He has the experience. But again, it's a different environment. It is a different location. It's a different type of municipal plant. Anthony, again, I did appreciate the stuff that he detailed, and I appreciate his union background and negotiating skills. He's got quite a diverse background in there in his skill set, but the overall lack of utility experience, I think that's a little bit that's why he was a little bit low, but I did like his skill sets.
Dave?
Obviously Paul is, far and away the most experienced as a general manager. For an interim, we have Mike here who, as others have noted, would hit the ground running like on Monday. He'd be coming in and already doing things with all the people he already works with. So for the interim position, both based on the fact that it would help develop his capacity and, reward his initiative and his hard work, I put Mike number 1 for those reasons. And obviously Paul is number 2, with Anthony being, not having the utility background. I concur with others. I would like to think that if we did go with Mike, that Paul, with his extensive, experience, could be available perhaps on a consulting basis to help with anything higher level. It's just a concept to think about. There's other ways to leverage, expertise other than driving up, here to be here in the corner office. We are talking about a short period of time. We're talking about summertime already. So that's where it came out.
Okay. I put Paul number 1, and the main reason for that is one of the biggest issues we have is getting the union contract negotiated. And he has the experience with MLPs and union experience to kind of drive that. I appreciate Mike tremendously for putting his name up but a year and a half of MLP experience is still a year and a half of experience, and but what I've learned in a year and a half is would not be enough to qualify me for much. So, you know, I appreciate his putting his name forward. And then, as people said, I like Anthony's experience a lot, and given the things. So Mike too, but some of the things that we've got going, I think Anthony would be a really big help with us, but not as GM, but elsewhere in the organization, I think that could be a big plus.
Just confirm you had, Mike is 2 and Anthony
Mike
is
is
3.
2 and Anthony's 3.
Okay. Rich.
Yeah, so I had a hard time between Paul and Mike. Mike, I felt like would just exactly what he said. He knows everybody, you know, keeping the lights on, which is the main job. I think that he would be, you know, he wouldn't miss a beat in terms of the managerial stuff and, you know, sort of keeping those relationships live. I worried that it might be a little large for him. But you know, I don't know, maybe there's enough of a support structure kind of around that to mitigate that. Paul, I felt like, as everybody said, had a tremendous amount of experience. I did appreciate his sort of vision for, you know, just sort of doing what was required. He seemed to want to step in and do what we felt was necessary and needed to, you know, get to the full-time hire. So I guess I would, you know, all of that said, I give Mike a slight advantage because I think that he would probably be able to do the same thing. But I wanted to throw out those ideas just in case there was any other discussion about the job being a little bit big for Mike, if, you know, particularly for those of you who know him a little bit better.
So just to confirm, you're putting Mike 1, Paul 2, Anthony 3.
Correct.
Okay. I ranked Paul first, Mike second, Anthony third. I think all really excellent candidates in very different ways. I really like the idea that, you know, Paul is coming in, he doesn't have an existing role elsewhere. He doesn't have a day job that he needs to transition. He knows the players, he knows the business really well. And I really appreciated that he was very focused on it as an interim role, you know, understanding that we are going to be looking for a full-time member and really allowing him to be focused just on that kind of interim period and focused on the goals and the continuity of the business. I think Mike is fantastic. I think I because of some of the other leadership gaps we have in the organization right now, namely the finance director, I worry a little bit about stretching our leadership too thin if we were to bring Mike in and add that additional role. Not that he couldn't handle it, but, you know, we just want to make sure that we've got enough support in all different areas. And I think, you know, same kind of goes for Anthony coming in, not only to learn the business, learn the organization, but also, you know, potentially for a while wearing 2 hats between, you know, the finance support and IGM role, I think would be a lot to give to one person. So I put Paul first, Mike second, and Anthony third. So with all those conversations, does anybody have additional comments to add or want to make any changes? Ranking. No. Okay.
I'm sticking with my plan, but I like Dave's suggestion that if it did come to a Mike decision, then getting Paul as an advisor is not a bad idea. You know, so thank you, Dave. So, but I'm sticking with my original.
Okay.
That's
Just making sure I'm getting the math right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we actually have a tie. If we take, which I thought we couldn't do, but I guess we have one. So from a cab perspective, slight advantage to Paul, kind of 6 points to 7 points to Mike, and then for Paul, 8 points from the BOC and 7 for Mike. So I think we should focus on those two for now. Any further discussion, advocation for Mike with the
It's a process question.
Yeah.
So what is the role of the two boards in terms of naming an interim general manager? Maybe this was explained in one of the emails, but
So yeah, good question. So it is the board's decision to hire a general manager and as well as an interim general manager. So same. And I think the CAB's input is important for us to take into consideration, which is why I wanted them to be here
for sure. Yeah,
for it, et cetera. But ultimately it's the board's decision.
Very similar scoring, right? In the,
Yeah.
at the end, right?
Yeah.
So it'd been plus or minus 1, or really.
Yeah, I mean, it's
right,
essentially a tie, right?
Same grade.
Yeah. I'll just say, I guess, again, I would still advocate for adding an additional resource to this team, by bringing Paul in as an interim. I've seen other organizations work where somebody who's named to specifically be an interim to keep the train on the tracks and moving forward works well. I would be a little bit concerned that it would be a lot for Mike to take on that additional role without a director of finance and take on that additional support. So
I respect it. Just to make Vivek and Dave, maybe there's something we can do there with Paul as an addition, but maybe not the transition. I probably feel that to keep things moving in a solid direction with Mike, because he knows everybody, there is a learning curve. There is that, and I appreciate Paul's experience and his timing. And he's looking for an interim, but maybe he could be an assistance or a greatly used assistance. I didn't think about that before, but the more that comes up, maybe that's something that we could use Paul for, not having two, but maybe someone that could greatly assist in moving forward. That again, just mirroring what Dave and Vivek said.
because whoever the interim GM has the ability to retain consultants. Right? I mean, no, they don't. They do. They have a lot of power. They said, but I've heard.
Yeah,
I don't. That's
any other?
I mean, I feel like we would maybe talk to the candidates and see what they feel about that. Is that something that, because are they gonna, or are they gonna feel like I'm the interim GM, but you guys are telling me what to do? I'm not really the GM.
That's what it's an idea, right?
No,
That's all. Yeah,
I'm just
exactly. Good point. Good point.
I mean, but maybe it's really up for whoever the interim GM is can make that determination of what expertise they need to support them. So it's maybe not something we resolve in this meeting, but it's just something that we know could happen.
Yeah, I think my strong preference is to go with the experience. In the GM role is different than not being in the GM role, and understanding the decisions and things you have to make as a GM is not the same thing as make it at operations. We may want to think about going forward, looking at an assistant GM position with the new GM and seeing if that isn't a training ground that Mike could fit into. But I don't think this is the time for that. I think I get the continuity. That's a good point, but I think right now we need someone who can come in, do union negotiations, maybe fill the financial spot, help fill the financial spot, and got a lot of things going on, and need someone who's been through that decision-making process to make those decisions. And I think we want to tell Mike that this is not a negative to him. We are very pleased with him stepping forward and would support his growth in leadership going forward. But I don't think this is the time for that.
I have a question, just logistically, if Mike were to assume the role, does he vacate the director of operations role?
No.
Or he does both?
He does both. So, yeah.
Just to chime on what you said, Ray, I mean, if this were January and it was like a full-time forever type of job, I would agree with you, like, we'd want to have, like, I'd be giving a different answer, well, especially if, you know, maybe Paul was, I don't know, maybe if it was when he was about to join Hingham. But I think what we need is more of a caretaker type of thing at this point. Not, we don't need the big new initiatives from the new leader that's going to come in January. We need a, I don't want to say smaller.
I didn't hear him say
I just-
big new initiative. I heard him say.
Oh, no.
Keeping the projects
I'm
that are going.
Timing on what Ray is saying.
Yeah.
Is that Ray is feeling, or as I heard you say, that we need that big experience because of all that it applies. It has to be done. And I don't think all of those things have to be done in the next 4 months.
No,
All of the things that a GM
No.
would need to do strategically don't need to be done in the next 4 months or whatever. That's all.
no, and I'm certainly not expecting him to fix all our initiatives in 6 months. No one can handle that. It is a process of setting priorities, decision-making, balancing priorities. A GM that has done that for 15 years brings in a sense of urgency, and someone who's just coming off for operations, trying to make decisions for engineering, for purchasing, for power, for all of the other things that IRD does and other groups do. That's a lot.
Yeah.
To
So
just pick up.
it's not the project, it's the
but-
experience.
But I think if we bring in a new GM and we encourage the new GM to have a assistant GM or expanded leadership opportunities for expand his role, then yeah, I think that's the kind of way to develop that. But to just jump in, I think, I don't want to say he's over his head. He's probably very capable, but I think we need someone who's can make.
No matter
the
who's
decisions.
named, the Board of Commissioners still oversees everything, so this.
I know, but we don't-
Nay, so it doesn't really matter who's
Yeah.
in there.
Well, I think it very much matters who's in there.
Which is-
Because the
Strategy
day-to-day,
process,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the day-to-day operation, board's not overseeing.
We're
that,
not overseeing
right?
power
Not every
purchases, we're not
Tuesday, Wednesday,
overseeing
Thursday, but overall, you guys have the,
construction.
you know.
Take, and to Rich's
Control
point,
what they say.
I think everybody steps up in a time of need, right? That or a time of transition, you know, if someone moves, you move as well. People share responsibilities, all the time in organizations due to transitions. So I think that's something that, you know, everybody always shares, you know, when things transition, you know, so there's always level. I think, you know, to Mike's ability to, take different roles and different aspects of the business on, you know, I believe that he could do that very well. I understand Paul, you know, has done that, but Paul has been removed for 4 years, right? So, yeah, he did that, but he's in a different environment. Mike's background's a bigger scale, much bigger scale, right? And you come and you look at some of the stuff that he's done, and dollars wise, size wise, you know, people wise. So yeah, you do touch every single aspect, but I believe, you know, when I stand in the flow here, the directors always meet. They're all aware of what others do in their director meetings. So there's very competent people here, running the departments. So I think the transition over would be easy, not easy, but it would be something that Mike would be fully capable of. And again, personally, I like the idea of the transition internally with an internal candidate, because it just helps that continuity faster.
Could I ask a question of the people, you guys who have been on the board a little bit, because you know some of the other directors. certainly better than me. Oh, I ask anybody if you know the directors. Would they respond to Mike in the way that would be necessary? You know, does he have that sort of relationship with them in terms of they would be able to respond to him as a supervisor for the next 6 months rather than a peer?
I will ask one of the directors that's in the room. Spotlight us.
Nobody's on the spot here, huh?
I believe the answer to that is yes. To be fair, I think Mike said it perfectly himself, and he was telling the truth in that he has good relationships with every director and does his best to maintain those relationships. And so I do think he's a very strong leadership person in our organization. So yes.
That's great. I appreciate it.
Can I ask about Mike's team? And, you know, obviously what we said is if we do offer him this role, he's doing 2 roles. I think we should assume, you know, that he does not have additional support from a consulting standpoint. Like we need to offer this role to an individual and expect them to take on the role fully. Because, and I also think it's important for the organization to see somebody who's clearly in the role. Do we feel confident that his team can step up and support if he needs to take time from what he normally does to act as the IGM?
Asking me.
Whoever might have insight into that answer is welcome to respond.
If you like me to answer, I'll answer you, but
Sure, yeah.
I believe he does have support, but under him, he has assistant and then another assistant under that. So there are 2 gentlemen underneath there that do supervise the line crews. And
Plus Nick and Grid Assets.
And plus Nick and Grid Assets, right? He has, and Ken. So yes, true.
And Chris on facilities.
And Chris in facilities, yes. So all those managers are underneath him and they're all very capable. And they've most of them have worked at big organizations, as you know. We've recruited great people in those roles. So I do think in terms of just director of operations itself, the line crew, he does have the 2 supervisors. Then he has the Grid Assets, 2 supervisors there. They're working supervisors, so they're out a lot in, you know, in various job site kind of things. But and then you have Chris from facilities also here, all strong managers. So I do think Mike has a good team of support, and I do think they respect him. So
one thing that we haven't talked about, not that money has anything to do with it, but I mean, for the 6-month period, the interim coming in, would there be a cost? There'd be a larger cost associated with that versus an incremental boost. You know,
Yes, it would be an incremental headcount. So yes, the cost.
I mean, it would be
likely
sizable, but not that that's the only or even the most important consideration. But it's just worth noting that there's also, if this works out, there's also a cost for ratepayers.
Any further discussion, or does anybody want to make a motion on one of the candidates?
I don't think we can at this point.
Sorry, let me check.
right.
Then take executive.
You're ready to go to executive session. Thank you.
No, well,
Okay,
no.
you're right. Yeah, thank you for keeping me honest. Okay, so I think so I will adjust. I feel like you know, there's been some strong arguments made for Mike in support of him in that role. I'll adjust my scoring to put him first and Paul second, which gives him a little bit of a boost in terms of the total. I think unless anybody has a disagreement, I would say the general consensus, not complete unanimous, but general consensus would be he may be our top candidate. So then we should move to move to the next topic to ensure that we are in a position to try to appoint an IGM. Okay. So with that, the next topic on the agenda is to discuss the transition. So the current general manager resignation is a prerequisite before the IGM appointment. And the separation agreement for the current general manager must be approved by the vote and physically signed by the commissioners. And the current GM before the IGM appointment can be made. So I do have the draft of the separation agreement, which was emailed to the board. If there is any discussion about the agreement, then we will need to move to an executive session to have that discussion. So what I want to ask is if the board, anybody on the board would like discussion on that, or if we're ready to vote without discussion.
Could we take just a couple of minutes just to discuss it? If it would be just a few.
But it has to be
Then
executive.
it has to be executive.
Yeah.
And we can
Yep.
definitely go to executive.
Yep, just for 1 minute and then come back. If
Okay.
that would be acceptable.
Okay.
And then you will have to move to that room.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So for this public meeting, open meeting, we're gonna take, let's call it a 15-minute or break.
Should be fine.
Pause.
Pause.
15-minute pause. Maybe 5-minute pause. So we'll be back. So we'll take this to.
Make motion.
You'll have to move to.
Move, the RMLD Board of Commissioners go into executive session pursuant to the general laws, chapter 38, section 21A2, to discuss strategy with respect to negotiations with the general manager, Gregory Phillips, concerning his employment agreement, and return to regular session for the continuation of regular session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Right back.
We'll be back.
Yep, and.
We have a. I know what, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Susan's gonna take the notes.
This is a good meeting today with Travis today. And then I come back here. I asked him, he said he doesn't know.
I don't know that much. I don't really know it.
I know, well,
Nothing that was in meetings.
No, and so.
When this was kind of, I looked at the meeting calendar and I realized they had like 3 board of commissioners meetings, but since our last meeting. Yeah. I went to the last one, which was last week.
Yeah, that was.
So that's after. Oh, it was after the news.
If we, I thought we were all going into executive session. I was going to my first.
So does somebody want to read the suggested motion?
Move that the RMLD Board of Commissioners approve the GM separation agreement as drafted.
Second, anyone? Okay, any further discussion? Can't really have, okay. All those in favor? Okay, 5-0, thank you. Okay, so with that said. Pass around. Signature.
Last page.
Get your home page, Dave.
I did not draft it. In your report.
So when does
Oh.
Mike start from the?
So we, so,
That would be.
that's our
Take a
next,
second.
the next step.
Take a second. Ink's not even on the paper yet. Mine's dry. Thanks, Charlie.
Gonna hold the door for you.
We are official.
Thank you to all who participated in that, and for the collaboration and positive, nature of all those discussions.
And thank you for your service to RMLD, Greg.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
And we'll finish on over the next couple of days. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, for our previous discussion, the Board of Commissioners, ranked, Mike O'Neill as our first candidate. So our next step would be to move into executive session and directly negotiate with, Mike. So I have the materials that I'll bring for that, but we have to go back to executive session for that. Not sure on the length of time, but, we'll be back. Okay, so does somebody want to read the motion?
Where,
You need, would you read the sponsor? That one.
Move that the Board of Commissioners go to an executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 164, Section 47D, exemption from public records and open meeting requirements in certain instances. Under Purpose 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel and return to regular session for the continuation of regular session. Second.
Okay. Go to executive session for this, and we will be back. I'm sure Rich will be back in a sec. Okay. Okay. Thanks everyone for your patience back in regular session. We do have a candidate. We have completed our negotiations and we are ready to, well, would like all of us to be here to vote for this.
Yeah. Rich.
Yeah, we're just waiting for Rich. So,
Supposed to be
He's here. Yes, he's here.
so maybe somebody can just slowly read the first suggested motion and please put Michael O'Neill's name in the open spaces.
Move that the RMLD
All right.
Board of Commissioners offer Michael O'Neill, employee, the position of interim general manager, subject to his acceptance to appoint
Michael
Michael O'Neill effective Monday, June 30th, 2025, until a permanent appointment is made or the board makes an alternative appointment. While serving as interim general manager, the employee shall be responsible for his or her current duties.
Second. Oh, sorry, your hand was up there. Second.
Okay.
You need to wait for Rich, right?
We do. I would love to wait for Rich. So, maybe I'll just, since we have extra time. So thank you again for applying for the role and being willing to step up. Super excited to see you in this role and assuming everybody votes when that happens. You know, the board's here to support you in that role. And it sounds like I know the organization is too. And thank you to the CAB for your input.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for the process.
Looking, so when you get through this, item 11. Just trying to kind of plan ahead. We can move quickly.
Yep.
He's gonna sit right. I'm gonna have you switch up.
Yep, sure. You can keep it.
Yep.
Come on.
No. Oh, okay. Why did you? No, yeah. No,
What?
No, we need you at the mic.
You need the mic.
you gotta present.
Bring in the portable mic.
So,
We had the motion.
okay, we just had a motion and second, Rich to appoint Michael O'Neill. So all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Thank you. Congratulations. Okay. So moving on, thank you for your patience.
Congratulations, Mike.
Okay, we're gonna move to annual report approval.
Oh, no, I just noticed there's a piece missing. Do we want to just maybe defer this to next month or?
Well,
No.
so as you guys know, there's two parts to the annual report. There's the body and then there is the audit, the audited financials. The audited financials have been postponed by the auditors. When the, and you're gonna read the motion here in a second, but when the audited financials come in, we don't make any edits to them. The audited financials are the audited financials. So this basically goes on top of it and then we are finalized. So what we're basically, what this group would be approving would be the body. And then when the subcommittee approves the audit and then you guys accept the audit, then both pieces will be done and you'll be finished with the annual report. That's the concept. So.
Any,
Yeah, I guess my thought is why not wait till it's done and then vote on it? We could have a chance to read the whole thing in totality and then vote, but other people disagree. Does any
it's
urgency?
holding, sorry, I might have missed you already answering this question. Is holding on approving this, holding anything, any like regulatory requirements or?
No, not this time, just trying to make sure as soon as we have time to get things done. So it's complete and ready to go.
Any other perspectives on? It's two separate documents,
Well, it's part of the annual report. The audit is part.
is the audit. Okay,
It's in there. It's part of the annual report.
okay.
I think
But-
if you look at the way the motion's read, right, so you guys, so this motion is not gonna, you're not gonna be changing the audited financial report. So it's an appendix to the, you could do what you want, but
Okay,
You
so,
vote to approve the audited financials at the July
Separately,
meeting.
correct.
Separately, anyway.
so this won't be, we're just approving the content of the upfront piece.
Correct. And that's what the motion says, yeah.
And then it would not be published until we review the audit report.
Correct.
But what you're saying is in practice, there's no benefit to approving the audit, the non.
I mean, I don't know what
The
the
report
urgency
now.
is to do the thing without the completed part, but
One question that I had as reading through the subject matter. We had 12 transmission peaks and 1 capacity peak in 2024.
Every
that-
year, yeah.
So it's we're taking 1 per month
For transmission.
for transmission. So that's how we calculate that. Yep, 1 per month and then 1 peak for the entire year
For capacity.
for capacity.
Yeah.
Okay, that was my,
It's a great question, Bob, and the interesting, it'll continue through 2028, because in 2020, so 2 more, so that capacity structure of 1 hour for the whole year.
Yep.
Has been in place since 2012, I think.
Yep.
But they're in the process of reforming the capacity market
Yeah.
reform. And it'll now be 2, there'll be 2 different seasons. And they'll come into, they're still finalizing the details of it, but that'll be 2028. So we're kind of a, I won't say a hold period, but no auctions, which normally done in February for capacity. The transmission continues to be the peak for each month. And for us, since we have 2 tie points, which is pretty unique for an MLP, we technically have 2 transmission peaks per month and true capacity peaks per year, but we combine them. Report, yeah.
okay, yeah, because we have 2.
And typically the transmissions coincide, but we have had some months where the hours don't coincide. And sometimes in one case, the data doesn't coincide.
So that capacity peak, then that'll determine your capacity charges for 1 year for 1 12-month period. Is that
Correct.
right? And
Yep.
then it resets at wherever that peak is.
Correct, yeah. So June, yeah, it's a fiscal year, yeah, mid-year to mid-year.
And so you think that in the future, they're thinking of a heating peak and a cooling peak? And think.
Well, yes, exactly right.
and
Yeah,
make
from the
sure-
capacity
yeah,
perspective.
From a capacity.
Yep. And then you remember our load forecast at some point in the mid 2030s, some point. Our overall load will start because of the adoption of electricity through heat pumps will become a winter peaking for the whole regional, theoretically become winter peaking as opposed to summer peaking, which will have significant impacts as well. Fascinating.
And, yeah. Okay.
Curious what the peak was yesterday.
Ours was 155.
Wow.
Yep. But the peak for the region was 26,025. It'll be adjusted, but over 26. 2024 was 24,800 and change. So it's over 1,000 megawatts more this year, and it's June. Last time we had a June peak was 2016. So we'll see what the rest of, and as Mike mentioned, Mike did, it was a bit of humor when he was talking earlier, but he is, besides running operations, he's also our weatherman. So weather does affect our load significantly, the regional load as well. So, but yesterday was first time in a long time of 25,000, 26,000, 25.
And yet our peak was 155.
Correct.
Which was lower than last year's peak.
Last year was 153.
Oh, it says
It
159.
says 159.
Oh, was it 159? Oh, no, that's our. Oh, so 159. So that is our peak, not the coincident peak. So this.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. So you're exactly right. Okay. The report is the peak, and in fact, didn't you run the number from yesterday? I brought it with me. Yeah, I'm looking to see where I got it. I've got it right here.
I want to say our all-time peak is 163.
Nope, we have it. I have it right here. So Peter had done some work earlier. All-time peak was 172 at 500, which was in August 2nd of 2006.
Talking about today.
But yesterday, so actually he did so total demand, we
No,
would
it's
have been
160. Yeah.
160. So yesterday, our absolute peak was before the coincident peak.
Yeah.
Was 169.
Ours was.
Ours.
Yeah. Okay.
Just for our network. Yeah. And so the good news is we dropped it, with all the things we do, we drop it off before the coincident peak. Pretty significantly.
So it was just a side note, it was in perfect prediction with ISO New England. It was almost pinpoint.
You know, they update those forecasts.
Well, daily,
More than
daily,
daily.
but their projection,
They
what it
just
was
are-
gonna hit,
yeah.
it was all
Yeah.
off.
Their models are pretty good.
Their models are excellent.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the annual report.
But I know, but that was my question. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of do.
And
Okay, so I'm not hearing any reason to proceed with a partial approval here. If anybody believes that we should just proceed with approving this one without the audited financials.
But then actually, since Greg won't be here the next time this is going to be discussed, I think if there are questions for the report, I think Greg's the right person to answer those questions. So I'd like to ask my questions.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so on page 1,
Yeah.
talk about innovative grid solutions that we're using. Could you just remind us what are the innovative grid solutions?
Yes, that's an ongoing comment. As you guys know from, in fact, those that were attending the River Park ribbon cutting, we're trying to reinforce our reputation as innovation. So some of the elements that are in there are long-term bets. So things that not just last year, but we're in the process of the long-term battery storage, the short-term battery storage. There are projects that have not yet turned into reality. There's the Harvest thermal storage project.
It's the storage solutions you're talking
There's
about.
all sorts of storage solutions. We continue, Peter and the team continue looking at sectionalizing our network, redistributing our network, using SCADA mates and a variety of other pieces of equipment. We've done some creative stuff in terms of new wildlife protection, particularly in Station 3, and also wildlife protection of our
SCADA mate switches.
SCADA mate switches. Yep. Right. You guys know that we're doing the AMI project, which is another example of it. We're also in the process of the team. Actually, this year we're doing research last year, but we're going to do some infrared inspection on an automated basis through a company. Anyways, I won't go into the details of the company, but basically looking for hotspots in our network. Hotspots are areas
Kind of
concern.
pilot project. They're going to scan 50 feet of miles of circuits and see. We're going to see how that turns out and evaluate it.
And then we
And would connected homes be part of this?
Yep, I was going to say on that. So there's the connected homes. There are the smart panels that we continue to work on as well.
Okay.
So there's a whole, but there's customer focused stuff and there's network focused stuff as well on that category.
Okay. All right. Then how were the customer trust ranking and customer satisfaction measured?
Typically in MLPs and for us as well, we actually participated in a 2025. We're just digesting it, but we did a customer survey. This one was actually done in conjunction with a lot of the other MLPs. Probably next month, Megan will walk you through a little more details, but MLPs and us in particular. So we have about 1,000 samples in this particular report, but we are highly ranked in terms of trustworthiness.
Okay, so good. So all MLPs are sharing the same.
Yeah, so each one of us have a tailored report,
Okay.
and it's also compared to IOUs as well.
Okay.
And
That's good.
us in particular, but all the MLPs rate pretty high on trustworthiness, which is consistent with the feedback we get from our customer service team.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
page 17, we talk about greenhouse gas, and then page 18. On page 17, obviously it ends at 2022. And then on scope 2 greenhouse gas, it says there's a 2-year lag. 2-year lag meaning, but it's not referenced in the page 17, right? So you're like, it looks like you're missing. There's nothing telling you on page 17 that there's a 2-year lag, right? There is on page 18.
Yeah, no, we didn't write the text around it. That's a good point. Yeah, we're starting to put this in at a specific request from this cab.
Yep.
And so we're working hard to get more and more current data, but it's driven by our data and our analysis.
But I think, Greg, I think he has a good point, because in scope 2, you talk about this being a state-driven information, right? So that's why it's 22.
Correct.
So that's why you're matching the scope 1 also.
Correct.
To that.
Yeah.
So
And on
maybe
page
this
18
needs
as well.
to be edited to include that same comment.
Yeah, that's all. Just there's a lag in the data. So if someone like looks at it, says, how come 2022 and 2023 and 2024 are not there? It's just to add the comment in 17 that there's a lag in data. It's just not available.
I think,
Just a note.
yeah, it's just a note.
Yeah.
So that it
Okay.
makes the same basis.
Well, they're both the same. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
The two of them are 20, 21, and 22,
Yeah.
but between pages 17 and 18, but just make a note. Okay. I can do it.
Same note. This data released on a 2-year.
It folds open until anyway, yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Vivek continue his question.
Okay, yeah, no, and I think pretty much it's okay. I think you talk about scope 2 emissions, 67% comes from open market, whereas most of that but if you look at the load only 20% is mixed load, right? Because more than 77% is carbon free. We have more than 77% carbon free load. 20% is mixed, and that accounts for 67% of our scope 2 emissions. So I think it's important, if people are really looking from a carbon impact point of view, 20% is accounting for 67% of our emissions. That's my takeaway. It's not that it's not a comment for the board, sorry, for the report, but it's just for us to internalize, so that when we are thinking about reducing our footprint,
Exactly.
that's where we have to focus. Because so if you look at two things, you look at how do we look at our impact. I think I'm just making this point for us to internalize.
Exactly.
It's good. Thank you.
One question on page 18.
Yep, 18.
It says for each megawatt hour of electricity produced by a qualified renewable resource, one renewable certificate is created. Should it say non-carbon? Because that includes nuclear, right?
Correct.
So the term of art is non-carbon under the definitions of the state, and that's not renewable.
Correct.
Okay. That's one little line in it.
Yeah, both of them. So they did, the industry still focus on the word REX, even for effects. And we've really been disciplined to try and say non-carbon, but I think that's right.
Because we can count nuclear as non-carbon, but the IOUs cannot, right? Is that still true?
I have to go, we certainly, so state by the 2021 climate bill, we definitely can.
We can.
If you remember, there's a whole set of compliance obligations that the IUs have. And so some of them, I don't remember where they are. I know they can do it. I just don't remember which ones. It's been several years since we did that or not. I have to go back and look.
I may say, I say non-carbon and put an asterisk.
Yep,
to
I think that's
find
good.
what that means.
Yeah.
In case anybody's reading this.
Yep, that's good. I'm gonna have that note here. It's good. Thanks. Any other?
Good report.
Yeah, it's a great report. As we kind of put it together, I'm like, wow, that's done. So we're pleased. We're proud of the work we did as a team at RMLD. Okay, I'll make those edits, and you guys, you can formally vote on it next time around. Great, thank you.
Thank you. All right, engineering project update.
Where we at?
All right, go to you. Station. All right, Station 6 update. Want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Oh, great.
That's okay. Go, yep.
All right, so that's a picture there of the transformers that one of the transformers that we delivered to Station 6. They took the ride from Station 4 to Station 6 at the end of May. They got placed in the foundations that had been built by Cardello. The company Reza, who did the transformer assembly, started in the beginning of June. So the transformers have been assembled, filled with oil, and tested with the initial testing. There's some parts that the VTC, the manufacturer of the transformer, still has to provide. We're working on a punch list of items with them to finish the assembly and final testing of the transformers. The phase 2 site work, which is the next part of the project, is being completed by PLM, should be ready mid-July for us to review and get that out in the street and advertise for an electrical contractor. And PLM is also working on the duct bank design for Ballardvale Street, the substation getaways and the rises, and we're working with them on the feeder design and how this substation is going to tie into existing circuits. From that picture, if you look on the left, you'll see the 345 structure that National Grid has completed. That was they raised the 345 line so we can bring the 115 lines underneath over to the substation. That large H-frame is a large steel frame. It used to be a wooden structure, much lower. They just completed, they've been replacing a bunch of structures, but they just completed the two behind the substation. As far as National Grid, we have a meeting with them next week. We're still waiting on some information from them so that we can finish up the phase 2 site work bid package. We're waiting on an MOU for the line protection. We have a meeting July 1st, so hopefully we can get that all straight with them so that PLM can continue with the finishing up the bid package for the next part of the project. There's still some related site work continuing on the project. Contractor now is working on the fencing. They're working some more grading, backfilling, some paving, and they have to relocate the water service to the building out back. So that still has to be finished. So that's still progressing up there. Next slide. Nothing much has changed on this, but I got a feeling that from some comments we got from National Grid, they may not be ready for us until 2027. We were hoping to tie in the end of 2026. They've kind of hinted on a document they sent us. The completion date would be 2027. So we'll be discussing that at our meeting with them on July 1st.
So would that mean commissioning would be 27 instead of 26?
Yep. And we're kind of
What time in 26 will you commission and what do they anticipate? I mean, that could
I'll
be
know
a
more
year,
July
or it
1st.
could be 2 years.
Less than a year. I mean, well,
We're hoping that they're only pushing off to quarter 1 or quarter 2 of 2027, but
6 months.
we won't know until a meeting.
Yeah.
Sometimes they get hard to commit to things. They can leave things a little vague until we have a meeting. So.
So if, so this is a delay, and how would that affect us?
It'll affect us energizing the transformer. We'll be all done. Everything should be built out by then, and it'll delay us energizing and commissioning.
So the
It won't
transformer
hurt us,
won't
but
be in use.
Yep.
Until they
Energize.
they energize it.
Yep. So
And-
they have structures to build on the right way. They got a plan going. It's just they're doing a lot of work. There's a lot of work going on in the transmission system. That rebuilding that whole 345 line where you saw the H frame from Tewksbury down to Wakefield. They have a bunch of other projects going on. I know they're busy, but we should find out more.
So my question also is like financially, how does it impact us?
It shouldn't have any significant, the delay should not have any significant impact. However, the national, so we have a $8 million line item in our budget for National Grid work to allow us to tie in. Their estimate is an estimate. It could be half as much or twice as much. So it's plus 200 minus 50. So we won't know until they get further down the road in terms of what that looks like. We don't expect it to be 2x, nor do they, but so it could be another $2 million potentially, but we don't know that until they continue moving down the road. The other element is, there's the financial piece, but the other one is, again, reliability, which is first and foremost. Part of the intention of this substation was to take some of the load off of Station 5. And, if you guys remember from the past couple of years, we've been bringing you updates in terms of our maintenance of Station 5. So we've done a lot of maintenance on Station 5. So Station 5, while it's near end of life, it's not close to end of life. So it probably has another 5 to 10 years of life on it before we do any major work to it. So the good news is the work that the team has done is basically added additional life to it, and taken potentially a critical situation and made it a less critical situation.
We need to spend more on Station 5, just from what I.
We have been, yes.
But going forward, because the delayed, do we need to spend?
Nope.
any?
No, that one's.
So it's
Yeah. That's a good question.
Yep.
Vivek. Yeah, the only, as you guys remember, right, the budget's much more significant than we originally planned. And a good chunk of that were the transformers that we ended up spending roughly $7.3 million on instead of $3 million on. There's each individual items, things have gotten more expensive, components and labor. But we've got that in the budget, and we're, as you guys, well, just so you know, our 2026 budgeting process has started. And we do both capital budget and operating budget. So in the capital budget, we'll, where are we year to date, and do the forecast. We'll be presenting that to you in the month of October, and to the Citizens Advisory Board. We'll probably do the similar we did in the past, but you guys get to take a look at it first, and then the board will take a look at it, hopefully approved by November. But financially, we're in strong shape.
Question, Pete, I noticed duct bank design in process. Is that the substation duct bank design? Is that the cable, the getaway cable?
Yeah, the getaways are gonna come up to Belleville Street. We gotta go underground past the transmission lines.
Yeah, on
Belleville Street.
Is there anything that we can do, Reading Light can do towards National Grid? They're gonna build a duct. Are they coming in underground? Are they gonna drop right off at an H frame and just drop right?
They're doing 3 monopole structures on each and intercepting the line, dead ending, and then they're coming across the aerial. Yep.
Okay, so there's nothing that we can do to build a conduit to say, okay, make it faster.
Nope.
Just kind of, just coming in, but, and then the push, what size duct bank leaving? Because.
That's good.
We were just talking about duct.
As we come out of the substation, it's going to be 2 duct banks to isolate some of the feeders. Then we're going to get to a point where it'll be 1 duct bank.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure the exact size, but
Yeah.
we're going to have provisions for at least 12 feeders out of there.
Always have to be careful of million cable.
Yeah.
To the duct bank, right? There's a man right there.
Yep.
Pulls a big, put the right conduit size in. That's all I can ask.
Yep.
Do it now.
Yep.
Great. Any other questions? Keep moving.
Thank you.
There you go.
You have update?
Yep, quick, we'll do it real quick. Here we go. Oops, yeah, great, okay, so, motion, well, we'll do it real time. So 2 main topics. The team is, so we have 2 new energy program specialists and IRD filled out. So Ray, the IRD team is basically staffed and motivated, and they're in good shape, which is great.
Good.
We've got, as we mentioned before, 4 interns. They, accounting, customer service operations, and marketing communications. Again, communications is always important. We've talked about that before. That's good. We talked about the finance director as being an ongoing process. The second item, group 4. So we've been working for the past 4, almost 5 years, just making adjustments to our organizational structure. The previous general manager had made some adjustments, etc. But there was some confusion with the retirement board. So we've been discussing for over 4 years with the retirement board the proper classification for a couple of the individuals in our grid assets group, include our substations. But we did have our final meeting this morning, and they approved of returning some key positions, 5 key positions, back to group 4 status. Last year they had moved it from group 4 to group 3, and they returned them back today. That's really, for those of you guys in the industry, really, really good news. So good success there. You guys have been curious about overtime costs for quite some time, for the past year. Just to report back, year to date, same period to same period, we're roughly 74% of where we were 2024 rate. That's roughly $250,000 less than it was in 2024 year to date. Also our line subcontractors, back earlier this year, we ended up just, eliminating our subcontractors, not completely, but just as we need them sporadically. And relative to 2024 year to date, we're $500,000 below. So that's $750,000 below relative to overtime and overtime related costs. Metrics, and we'll probably get into them a little bit later in a subsequent meeting, but and you'll see them in the package. But the cash flow, which is an important tool, we've actually got that added to our financial, which is great. This is an important topic that I want to ask. So we put it in the general manager's update. So in working with the IRD team and the finance team, and obviously going back to our cash flow statements and balances, we have a rate stabilization fund. The target of that rate stabilization fund is targeted to be $6 million. It's our rainy day fund when something catastrophic happens. We have not pulled anything out of it for any catastrophic issues, except for back in 2021, the balance had gotten up fairly high, and so we ended up with the approval of the board, and this will be the approval of the board, what we're asking for. But we made a similar transfer of $1.6 million out of the rate stabilization into operating and ultimately into our fuel reserve or our purchase power energy. Right now, the balance is about $7.6 million in the rate stabilization fund. So that means there's roughly a $1.6 million over what our target is. So the proposal and what we'd like approval to do, to transfer 1.5 million out of the rate stabilization fund into the purchase power fuel specifically. And specifically, we'll apply that to our fuel reserve and both July and August monthly bills. So that's why we're trying to do it now. The split of it's not 50-50, it's 65-35. We're trying to balance it out. And there's a bunch of subtle reasons in terms of why it's not a 50-50 split. It's basically during the timing of when we bill versus when we pay power, et cetera. But anyways, it works out to be roughly about $8 less an average bill. An average bill is about just under $200. It's a 4% reduction. It would be the same for both. Again, that's an average bill. It would be roughly the same for both July and August. So what we're asking for is the approval to transfer out of the rate stabilization fund. That'll bring the rate stabilization fund back down to about 6.1 million. The rate stabilization fund will continue to earn interest. We just think, given the time and just summer is a high load period, it's probably a good time to make a transfer to the benefit of our ratepayers. Questions?
So we'll equate as your fifth bullet here, whatever, it'll come over residential bills specifically in July and August.
Yeah, it'll go across all the bills, but just to give you
Right.
What's the reference?
Yeah.
Some of the large, bigger the bills, the more.
Sure.
Yeah, but just to give you a rough order of magnitude. But yeah, that's exactly right.
Do you have a suggested motion to read?
I didn't. Yeah.
That's right.
Before we,
I'm going to read a suggested motion. Okay. Yeah.
We can have discussion on it.
Okay.
Yep.
Kevin, feel free.
Propose a transfer of $1.5 million to the purchase power fuel fund to reduce the July and August monthly bills from the rate stabilization fund to the purchase power fuel fund.
Correct.
Sorry, I messed that up.
No, you did great. We'll take this.
I was on the fly. Fix that,
That was
please.
fantastic. It's good.
What he said. So the cab usually does it first.
Correct.
What he said, that's what I said.
Yeah, this is funds. It requires both.
Thank you.
You want discussion by Charlie before you vote, or
Charlie second. No, who seconded?
I said,
Okay, good.
Charlie, and then Bob.
what we're gonna do, we're gonna discuss.
You do discussion.
This
Any
is just
discussion?
moving and seconding, right? Did we second?
somebody needs to second Bob's motion.
Second.
Thank you.
So the rate stabilization is there for like when bad things happen.
Correct.
And so there's a spike, another war, another Iran or whatever, Ukraine. So I guess I worry that we're doing this to like have a couple months
be better, but maybe it's better to hang on to it for when something really bad is going on. I wonder what the counter argument is, not to be the skunk in the lawn funny, but
I would refer to the third bullet, target level. So there's some sort of policy that says that we target to have $6 million in account.
okay, so this is,
If we're above that, then we should probably consider what Greg's doing.
So can we hear a little bit about why the 6 million? I mean, is that a magic number? Is there some probability associated with those?
It's a number that was put together a while back, but we look at it at this point in time as being roughly 10% of our average energy spend.
Okay.
So it's a 10% buffer.
10%.
And it was a board voted illustrate, just to illustrate, probably like a.
How long ago?
Oh,
About 15 years ago.
top of my head.
so 20 years ago. So I mean, one could imagine that whatever we said 20 years ago might need to be a little higher now.
Well,
Did we set it at a dollar value or do we set it at like a percentage of revenue or something?
so before, back then, it was basically meant to be something that would be dipped into on a regular, it would be a part of the float. We now have other accounts in our balance sheet that we use for float. We have a PPCT account and we have a fuel reserve account, which is this one. So those are what we use to balance the ups and downs. And so quite a while back, we stopped moving that up and down. And so we basically, some of you guys remember, we basically said, we don't really want to use that for a stabilization fund, even though that's what it says. We want to use it for a rainy day fund when something catastrophic. So the other element, back to your point, we spend roughly on average, $6 million a month, roughly 6 million. It goes up and down depending upon. So that's basically 1 month's worth of bills too. Now that's just rate stabilization. Our balance sheet is about $62 million. We have a very strong balance sheet. And so we would typically get pressure, and we have in the past. Why don't we take some of our strong balance sheet and give it back to our ratepayers? And if we need it again, we can ask it for again. This particular case, we just, as we looked at the number, interest rates are particularly good right now. So that number continues to grow fairly at a higher rate now than it was 3 or 4 years ago when rates were lower. And so that's why it's like, it's summertime. It's a good time to do it.
So I do have one more question about this. Sometime since it's been created, has it been used for its original intended purpose of like this rainy day, something really?
The original purpose was as a rate stabilization fund, which is to make adjustments on a monthly basis.
Okay.
We have basically created other accounts to do that purpose, which we have in place right now. And we look at.
So you haven't had to use it for a rainy day fund?
But it was used in 2021. I remember that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We had a robust discussion about
Okay, that's what I was
using it,
wondering about,
and
yeah.
we did want to use it significantly back in COVID.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
And we specifically said, we're gonna call it rainy day, not rate stabilization.
Mm.
Yeah. So, yeah,
sorry.
we did. We talked about using it because we saw the severe spikes in energy costs.
2021,
The winter
2022 was a pretty magical wrap. Back to, just so you guys all understand, Vivek's point is correct. The only time we made any recent transfer was exactly what we're doing right here. Was back in September to December of 2021. In that case, we did it at over 4 months. And it was kind of rounding error.
And I also remember that there were discussions from the town of Reading when the payment to the town was brought up. They were pushing on how big this limit should be. The town would like it to be smaller so that they could get more money.
They'd like to balance.
Target level
want
of
the
the
balance.
account.
They want the balance.
Yeah. So I think that's part of the balance, right? But I think it's prudent, to Dave's point, it's prudent to have an appropriate level. So the question is, what is an appropriate level? And
How do you determine that? What are the criteria? I guess would be part of my question.
I think this is an actuarial analysis because this is actually like a risk analysis.
Yeah.
So maybe the prudent thing to do, if you really don't need it right now, is to, if you can postpone it by a month, if you can do an actuarial analysis, if someone can do it and figure out what the right limit should be. If it is 6 million, you can still, make the money effective.
I hate that we don't need to do an actuarial analysis. It's $6 million. It's a 1 month supply of money, right? So if it's $6 million a month, put 1 month supply in there.
That's just that fund. It's not,
That's what I'm saying.
there's other funds we have.
I
Yeah.
understand that.
Another
but
$10
that's-
million.
But that's, and if we've seen spikes and that's what happens, natural gas goes up and there's some type of thing. And there's absolutely some quadrupling at what National Grid and Eversource customers went through. Because they're at a different rate structure. We do not have that rate structure, but again, we don't want to absorb the cost on the transmission side. So we can give it back and help our customers do that. And that's what that money's for. Severe spike that comes in, rate stabilization, that's there for that intense spike hitting you and you don't know when it's gonna hit.
I also think there's two separate things here, right? So right now, the current policy procedure, where you want to say the target is 6 million. If we want to change that target, that's a discussion for another meeting.
Right.
Right now, the current target is 6 million. We're 1.6 million over. This fund has some specific restraints tied to it that it has to be used for rate stabilization. This is what they're trying to smooth out the rates during the summer months when we might be more exposed to the market. I think it meets all the criteria, but if you want to talk about is 6 million the right million, I think that's another meeting for another day to adjust the policy.
Our strategic plan conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't put my mouth, yeah,
Thanks, Dave.
because it led to all this.
Second motion.
I
Second
just
motion,
if
second.
you know the, can I just ask one? In terms of the bill or the rates versus last summer, how much higher are rates this, like projected to be this summer for residential?
We project them to be roughly 6%. I have to go back and look at that. I know we projected that. I have to go back and look at the year to date. I don't know.
So this will be providing some
Yeah.
relief
Oh, yeah,
against
yeah.
that. versus-
Yeah, it's real. It's
So it's
real money. I mean,
Yep.
Okay, we're ready to vote here.
please.
Okay,
I'm in favor.
abstain. Okay. Please.
Did you say abstain?
Yeah.
Any further discussion for the board?
Call the question.
All right, all those in favor? Okay, 5-0. Thank you.
Did you get a second?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, it was back.
Ray seconded it, yeah.
And it was 2003.
Okay, so
Got
22
it.
years ago.
Yeah. I just don't think that I remember it.
Can't believe that was yesterday.
All right, we're, this is in your package. Again, we keep working, again, the GM goals are a team goal. We keep making good progress. And as we do the transition, we'll put them in strong hands to keep that ball moving forward. So as the milestones for the first 2 quarters we've hit, and we have more work to do, but we're feeling pretty good about it. So that's a quick update from me. And again, as you guys said before, I was going to say thank you from Greg, but I'll give it to you verbally. Thank you from Greg for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think we got through that scheduling already. I think our only next up is we need to move again to executive session. Yeah. We're going for a record. I don't know. Can anybody tell us if that's a record? But yeah, we need to make a motion to go to executive and then we're gonna come back only for adjournment.
To adjourn there.
For the executive session.
Oh, we're all going there? Okay.
Yes. Please.
I move that the RMLD Citizens Advisory Board go into executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Law 164, Section 47D, exemption from public records and open meeting requirements in certain instances under the purpose of number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property relative to the property North Reading, and return to regular session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
One second.
Okay.
All right.
To read.
2 minute page.
Move that the RMLD
Yeah,
Board of
one
Commissioners
shot.
go in executive session pursuant to Mass General Laws 164, Section 47D, exempt from public records and open meeting requirements in certain instances under Purpose 6 to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property relative to the North Reading, and return to regular session for the sole purpose of adjournment.
All those in favor? Okay, thank you.